Hi, my name is Nate Nisler, and this is for Hyperactive Studios. Now we're going to start a whole PHP training course in which we start breaking down how to do PHP and how to make different things work. So I've actually got a decent amount of PHP stuff in here, but we're going to be doing a lot more with it here. And I got a lot more than what I even have loaded in this thing. So I've done a good bit with this, and so we will have quite a bit to work with actually. I guess one of the first things I need to point out, went to my edit here and to my preferences, and then I set my editor here to tab width to just 4 just by decreasing it like that. As you can see what happens there. If I have it at 8, which is standard tab, kind of makes the indentions rather large, and so it's an excellent idea to really push these down to a smaller amount so that it's not ridiculous. I mean, you could do like 2, but that kind of gets hard to see. But I know 4 works good for me, and I like that. Now, what we have here is some opening tags. Now, PHP is used so we can dynamically generate pages on the fly server side before it gets loaded on the client, which would be like your web browser, like Firefox, Chrome. Let's see here. There's Safari, there's Opera, there's Internet Explorer, etc. And so, lets you dynamically change things up. Now, this isn't necessarily, it's not event driven, it's page load driven for the dynamic execution of the scripts. And so that's something I need to point out here. This is different in PHP than it is, say, in Java or Python, because you're doing the dynamic generation of your code on the page load, whereas in like Python or Java, it's actually going to be event driven. It doesn't have to be on page load. And so because of this, it makes it more interactive. So my personal opinion is that Ajax with PHP is not my preference as far as the language goes. But other people definitely do this on a regular basis. And it's done widely in the industry, but you can integrate PHP easily with HTML. And that's where some confusion comes in, because people start wondering what part, they start thinking that their code in PHP is client side, and then they just grab the values from PHP. That's not the case. The code that we actually are coding in here actually gets all generated server side. So that code's not available to the client. It's not like you can just go grab the value stored in blah 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 variable as you're using the page. That doesn't happen. Again, that has to get generated server side when the page loads. When the page first loads. So I'll kind of point that out a little bit more here, and I'll get into this a bit more. Try to really hit home this point because it's really important when you're dealing with PHP. It'll really mess with you if you're not familiar with this, and it can really add to some confusion as to what's going on with the language and what's happening in your code. It's fundamentally important to understand it, because it will make a difference in you figuring out how to make something work or not work on the code. And with this pointed out too, this is not a standard programming language like you would have Java or Python. There's no syntax checker for this. There's no compiler. There's no. It gets compiled. It gets computed essentially server side by Apache, a PHP module, and so if you're trying to hunt down and debug errors, there's really nothing to work with. You can use NetBeans or Eclipse to help out with this, but for the most part, with this language, you're kind of flying blind. So, just FYI there on this, it's a little different. You're not going to have the robust programming tools. You're not going to be able to do step watches and step into variables and all this stuff, execution of a code and such. So it's got a lot of bells and whistles in the language, but you're not going to have your standard programming tools you may be familiar with application programming if you come from that end of things. So this is different. This is a scripting language. It's a server-side scripting language, and it's different than what you would do with a regular event-driven programming language. So let's have a look at this. First off, when we're doing a PHP page here, I just started out with these tags here. Now, this is standard. This is what almost everyone uses, but not quite everyone uses this. But just about. you want to do this as your opening tag, and then this one here is your closing tag, like that. Now you can have other kinds of opening and closing tags, and I kind of want to point this out. You can have that. That is the short tag. In order to do the short tags, however, you must enable certain features in the PHP modules inside the PHP ini file. The PHP file can get rather large, so I'm going to show you some tricks here to essentially, when you're doing your lamp here, for doing your PHP, how to turn those features on. And this is an extension of the whole lamp series, so if you haven't watched those videos, you're going to kind of be lost on here. This highly depends on your knowledge of lamp as far as getting in there, making changes to the server and things of that nature to enable different features inside PHP. Because if you don't know how to do that, you're not going to be able to make the language do what you really want, and that's really important. So I am diving into that and not going to ignore it. So we're going to dive right into server-side stuff along with doing the actual coding. So if I just come back over to my terminal here and I bring that up, one of the things I need to look at is if you do an ls, let's start out with that, right? If I do an ls, well, I'm in my home directory, but if I do an ls and I say /etc/php5, not 4 but 5, you can see all the different files in here, including Apache, etc. ls again, and I can say conf d like this, and I can see all those configuration files. Still not giving me what I want, so let's check out Apache. Just hitting tab to speed that up, and check it out, ls/etc/php5/apache2, and we get our PHP ini file. And you might go, well, why do I care about that? Well, essentially, alright, I'm just going to vim it just to get this point across. php.ini, and enter. Alright, and the problem we have with this file is it's huge, and it grows depending on what you have installed. Alright, so we're sitting at 1,870 lines of configuration for this file. That's how big it is. It's a very, very big file. And so, essentially, what I want to do is I want to just hunt for the thing I'm looking for and not have to try to figure out where on earth this next thing is. So, if I type in grep, this lets me search, and if I do a -n, lets me know what line number it's on. And then if I say /etc/php5/apache2/php.ini, like that, well, I need to put in a search option, sorry. That gives me my file location, but I need to tell it what I want to search for. And in this case, I need to be searching for the whole short tags thing. So if I need to say short _ open _ tag. This is a special option inside of the PHP ini file. And when I search for it, it lets me know that the real option is on line 226. And in this case, we can actually use the short open tag set to on instead of doing the whole regular full-size tags. Now, I'm going to tell you right now, for portability, you always want to do the full-size tags like I was doing in the beginning, these PHP ones, because this works no matter what on every server. This does not. That option must be set to on in order to use these tags. If you don't, your page won't load. It won't work. So I'm just going to run this. It's going to be nothing more than a simple addition bit of code. And if you're familiar with code, you may already understand what's going on here with the PHP tags here. But I'm going to click on save here. I'm just going to come over to my page, and we're not there yet. Basic, and then you notice that it still worked. I still got these numbers added, and it gave me the result. So my PHP did work with those short tags. So that is a possible working way of handling this, and works great. Okay. So that was the short tag method. So we saw the regular tag method, the short tag method, which the regular style method is more like XML. There's another type of method you can do also, and this makes it more like the whole script style like you're used to doing with maybe like JavaScript or whatever, and saying what kind of language it is and all that. And that works also, but kind of annoying. It's like a lot of extra typing, and you probably don't want to do all that typing. This one's valid, period. However, a lot of people don't tend to choose this one because it's just extra work. And so kind of goes the mantra of why do extra work. But here we are, like so. And that does our starting tag. And our ending tag is like that. And so that's valid also. And so if I save this, and I don't have to do any special configuration options for this one. This one is just built in with the web browsers, and this one's valid, just as valid as the PHP, well, question mark PHP and then closing question mark. But again, if we come over here, click on reload, blah blah blah, you see it works. No changes, it's perfect. It worked fine. All right, and then there's one more. If you want to do it ASP style, you can. And in order to do it in ASP style, we need to basically make another option available. Otherwise, it won't work. So it's kind of like the short method, but not quite. So in order to do the ASP tags, we need to come in here and do a percent sign like that, and then a closing percent sign. Well, opening and closing percent signs like that. And see the this one isn't used very often. The G didn't even recognize it, but we can do it. And the way you make it work is that you actually have to enable ASP tags over in here. So if I do a grep again, and if I say ASP, and I believe it's tags, so ASP tags is turned off, and it's on line 230. So this is cool because then I can say vim /etc /php5 /apache 2 /php.ini like that. I'm going to put a sudo in front of this to make sure I have root privileges to edit this file, like so, and then I'm going to go edit this file. Alright, I need to go to line 230. It's going to ask me for my password. Alright, and work my way on down to line 230. Awesome. And there we are. Now we're at ASP tags off. Cool trick. There's actually a way to actually search inside of Vim too, but I'm not getting into it right now. I need to say on, just like they did here. So see the syntax here? You have to match it exactly. You cannot change it, so to speak. So if you do off, off has to be done the same way as all the other tags with a capital O. If you do on, it's got to be with a capital O on. Required. If you don't write it that way, it will not work. These are case sensitive, typically. Alright, so if I hit escape and then hold down shift and say ZZ, it will save it. Okay. Now, I can say sudo space service space apache 2 space reload. Okay. And do a gentle reload, so that way it won't disrupt any basically third parties who are accessing the page. So very, very cool. Alright, come back over here. Make sure we save this. And then go over here, and I shouldn't see any difference. And I didn't. It worked. So now we can use those tags too. But again, my preference is, without a doubt, the standard tag, because irregardless of what the settings are for PHP, inside the PHP ini file, these tags always work. So if you just want to be like safe and you don't want to do a whole lot of extra typing, whatever, these are the shortest tags that always work. So this is my recommendation of what to use, and that is why you want to use it. Okay, a couple of variables here. Now when we do variables with PHP, we put a $ in front of it. So it said $x equals 5 semicolon, and then you do $, and then I'm just going to do $y equals 8 semicolon, and that's going to assign the integer value of 5 to the variable x, and it makes this variable into an integer variable. Same thing for y, and then when I add them together, I'm saying, get the value of 5 for x here, and get the value for y, which is 8 here, like so. And I'm going to say, adding these together, you put a semicolon to terminate the end of the line, meaning that, hey, this is where the end of the line is. We put a semicolon there, just kind of like we do in like C or C++. And we're going to say $x plus $y semicolon equals, in this case, I'm creating a variable called sum, the $ in front of it, and it's going to then hold the value that's created from these two variables here. And then I'm going to display this out. Echo is used a lot. You will use this command a whole lot because this is how you're going to echo out or basically generate HTML code from inside of PHP server side. So essentially, this is PHP code, HTML code that we're generating. Now I could put HTML tags around this. I didn't. I'm just doing this to keep things simple right now, but this is probably the worst way to write up an HTML page right now, but I'm keeping it simple, and then later I'll show you putting in the HTML tags with this and showing how you can integrate the two together. But essentially, we're kicking out HTML code here. It's just basic body tag code. And there's no tags. It's just like as if you're typing text in the body. That is essentially what we're doing here. So when I say echo here, I can echo out the here in quotes for that part of that string and say dot $x. I don't have to do anything special to convert it. It will just do it automatically. This is your concatenation option here. By putting the little dots right here, just basically combines this text here with this variable here. So it's going to say the 5. Alright, I don't know why I said the. Why did I do that? 5 plus the 5 plus. That's stupid. Alright. Alright, let's delete that. So $x here, concatenate with plus, and put spaces on each side so it doesn't get crammed together. And then I'm going to concatenate that with $y. So I'm basically saying 5 space plus space, 8 here, concatenate with space equals space again, and then sum, whatever 5 plus 8 is, which will be 13. And then that's going to be the end result. So here's the sum of all that. And when we run this, it's going to echo display out. I'm just going to get 5 plus 8 equals 13, which is a true statement. It's true because it's mathematically generated inside the code. So yeah, we can do math with it. We can also do sentences. We can take little variables, add them together. That may not mean anything to you right now, but you could essentially change HTML tags on the fly or change values in those tags with PHP and construct HTML code or CSS code or JavaScript code or whatever as far as that goes. And essentially you can generate the code server side when the page loads. Now that's the important thing. You may notice I keep coming back in here and clicking the reload button because again, like I said, this code is generated server side on page load. So I have to reload the page in order to get the code to execute. So that's essentially what I'm doing. And so PHP only executes on page load. So that's why I keep coming back here and hitting the reload button. Okay, so with that done there, let's look at another way of doing this. Let's take this a little bit further. We went over some cool things. We learned how to create variables. We learned how the PHP tags work. We learned how to do sum, a variable here, and add these two variables together. And we also learned how to display this and generate this as values that we'd see in the actual web page. See, because in a web page, this isn't going to get seen. This all gets executed server side, but it won't end up in your final HTML, whereas the echo tags will. So whatever the output of this is going to be is going to get displayed in the HTML, and essentially the HTML values, or shall we say HTML code that gets generated here, was 5 plus 8 equals 13. That was the HTML code that got generated. There's actually a way, I'm going to get into it later on with Firefox, where you can actually track what's going on with your PHP pages and see some of the values going back and forth a bit. And we'll look at how to do that, and that's really important and really useful. And I'll get into that. But we need to have a look at some of this here now. So let's go into a bit more. Let's go into functions. I don't want to get into this stuff here until way later on. I got a whole bunch of database programming stuff with MySQL with PHP, but that's further down the line. We'll get into that later. Alright, so same PHP tags. I'm going to get rid of this here, because I definitely don't want that. And there's a stupid statement. Alright. And we're going to get the same thing as before. Now check it out. If I come in here to my Firefox browser here, and I go to my page Nate, in this case, functions, and this is just a user, this is an account I created earlier in the LAMP server. You need to watch that before you try doing this. So there we go, functions, and we get the same thing. I'm like, going, okay, that's kind of boring. Yeah, but it's actually quite interesting because we actually can take control over this. We'll start changing things up a bit. Now, one of the things I can do is I can come in here and I can say make these variables global. So I can say x equals, let's do something different, 6 semicolon $, y equals 7 semicolon. And let's see here. No, it's going to give me the same result. Let's try doing that instead. Alright, so that should give me 15 there. Alright, so I'm going to do that. Now, if I come in here and say globals, global, save like that. I then can come back over here, and you notice it says 6 plus 9 equals 15. And then now we have a different value. And this is how you can have local variables versus global variables. Now, so I showed both there. So we can define values up here and then pass it in through the function globally that way without having to actually pass it in as parameters. We can also pass it in as parameters, which makes a lot of sense. I could come in here and say something like $in x, $, in y, something like that. Don't need my global anymore. And instead, I would come in here like so. And place these in. So, and this makes it, oh, well, basically self-contained. Alright, and we're going to pass in these values here. Pass in the values from x and from y. So it's going to be 15 again. And there we go. It updated and we got the same result. So if I run this, it got computed and we got 6 plus 9 equals 15. Just like that. Alright, and so that's our add function working. Here I defined my function, and here I made it work. Right here, I actually called it, if you will. In order to create a function, this is really nice. We say function in front of it, and then we say add. Let's say the name of the function. In this case, add. And then I'm saying, what values I'm passing or what parameters I'm passing into it. I put that inside of parentheses, just like we do most other modern day programming languages. And it has an open curly brace and an ending curly brace. Again, just like C, C++. And then we say $sum equals $inc, n x plus $my semicolon, and then echo that out, just like we were before. Now the cool part is I can call this several times and change this, and I'm going to get different results if I pass in different values. So, like before, we said, basically x is 6 and y is 9. We pass that in. I could pass in other things here, just as a point. And since this is a function, I can pass in these actual literal values into the parameters here of the function, and then they get assigned into those parameters inside of the function and gets used locally. And I can call this function over and over again as many times as I like in the code. And so instead of having to write all this code over and over again, I can just call it as a function, and it really shortens your code. It makes you type a lot less. It also lets you bulletproof your code, where you make fewer mistakes, because you just write your code into these functions like this, keep things straightforward and simple. And by doing so, it lets you eliminate errors, and that's really, really important with PHP. It can be very difficult at times to hunt down errors in PHP. So anything you can do to reduce errors and reuse code and minimize issues, you're better off by far. So it's very important that you do that. Alright, so let's do exactly that. If I run this again, I get this all on the same line. Why? Because there's no break statement in here. There was no HTML generated for that. So I can come back here and I can actually generate a break statement at the end of each one of these lines. Here, now we just did this for summation here. There's value, but it doesn't mean that I have to leave it there. I can instead come in here and keep adding to the code. So for instance, I could say, like this here. So we found an issue with the function. Now this is great because I can make this one correction in this function, and it's going to propagate to all my calls to my function. I don't have to change the rest of my code. So I just fix the issue where there's the issue and not have to worry about it elsewhere. So I'm going to say BR, statement for break, and then space slash here like that. You remember that from the HTML series there. That's how you do your break statement. And if I do that real quick and then come back over here to my HTML and run it again, you notice it automatically goes down to the next line. So there's an example of generating HTML code in there with the rest of it, with the rest of your text for your output from server-side execution of the PHP. And so this lets you essentially come in here, write some code up, and execute your PHP code quickly, easily, and make it generate your HTML. But it has to get generated server-side, and then it gets sent to the client, aka Firefox, Chrome, etc., and gets loaded up as a web page at that point in time. So you don't write HTML in a traditional sense. You can intermix HTML straight up with this code and everything. It's really kind of neat. But you use a lot of echo statements like you see here to generate the HTML code and everything with PHP. It works quite nice. It works quite nice. Alright. So that's another example of how to do global variables along with and also passing in parameters and values and things of that nature. We're going to get into some more stuff here in just a second, but let's have a look at that. I guess here in a bit I'm going to go over the full size. I need to stop the video here, but we're going to go into the full size global variables here, as far as you can make calls to them without having to say globals like we did earlier. And define inside the function, we can actually say global equals and then put in quotes the variable, etc., and then we can actually call those variables directly within inside our function that are global variables by their name and refer to them by name. It's different than what we did with the global command earlier, but we'll get to that in just a second here. Cool. So be right back. Okay, so let's look at how to do the global setup here. So if I'm just going to come in here real quick, and let's do that with the whole globals. So we have a couple of variables set up here, and I'm just going to kind of ignore the fact that we have these values being passed into this function at the moment, and we're going to use our global ones instead. So in the case of our sum here, and this might give me a chance to show off how to do comments too. If I do globals, sorry, I guess my cursor wasn't far enough in the window. $sign globals. Let's see here, globals, and then say in brackets the particular variable. In this case, it's going to be x, right? And then I need to add in, and I'm too lazy to type all that again, so I'm just going to select it all and paste it in like so, and change that to y. I'm sorry, that x needs to have quotes around it. Sorry. And so this one needs to be quote y quote like that, and semicolon at the end to end that. And I'm going to say this equals sum. I'm just going to comment out my sum one below. So $sign sum like that equals like so, and it's going to say slash star space, say star slash save, and that will set those values up. And then I need to do one other thing too. Same kind of idea. Let's expand that just a bit to encompass the line down below it too. So let's just go ahead and grab that like so. And then I'm going to do my echo again. And again, I'm too lazy to type all that out again. But I'm just going to show you the difference here. I'm not going to keep this. I'm going to go back to my previous one. So sum doesn't have to be changed, but this right here of the globals does. So, and then I'm just going to reference that global value. And what this does is essentially references, again, just a little bit more. Hold on a second. Might be apparent, but if it's not, well. Basically, what this does is this references the global x right here. So this is the global variable x, and it's getting referenced here. And then this is the global variable, it's accessing the global variable y, and this is the global variable y here. And so we're basically calling it in that manner. If I save this, you should get the same working result as before. Bada bing. And there we go. Now you might be going, wait, that changed on there. Well, yeah, because realize we're getting the global variables each time, so whatever values we pass in here no longer matter. It won't do anything because we changed it. But yeah, because these global values are getting read here and then getting displayed here, it's going to be the same thing each time. Whatever these global variables are set to, that's what's going to happen when you call this function. But going back to where we're passing in things through parameters is a better setup. And so I'm just going to delete this code now that we just wrote up. It's just purely for demonstration purposes and not to actually plan to keep it. I don't have any plans to keep that. But just want to show you that's how that works, and that's how you do that. Okay. Now, I kind of talked a little bit about how some of this stuff works, but there's a lot of other mathematical operations I didn't even get into, and I really should. So if I say minus like that, and then come in here and say minus, we can actually subtract two values. And I just need to pop into that and start talking about that. Should have talked about it earlier, and I didn't. So there we go. We can see our minus here, what happens, and then our value. And we get -3, -5. Cool. Okay. Let's look at some other stuff too. Not only can we add or subtract, we can also multiply. Do a star. Might say x. People are familiar with x for multiply. And if I multiply these, I get my multiplication values. So 6 times 9 equals 54, and 12 times 17 gives me 204. And there we go. It's multiplying. If I divide, we use a slash symbol for divide. And this will divide one into the other. Now this is going to be based on integer, and this is going to bring up a good point here for me to transition into float value. So here we have two integers dividing, and we do get a float value as a response to this. But we can initialize it. When I say initialize, start this variable at a starting value. This means initialization. Initialize it to be a float. All I have to do is do that, and then that value is going to be a float. The other cool thing about this is I can also typecast it too. So, for instance, I could say in parentheses here, float like this, close parentheses, space 9, and then this will make 9 a float when it gets assigned. And this is typecasting. This is temporary assignment of it being a float value, and that gets assigned like that. Bam, there we go. And there it is, basically as a floating point value. You could also do 9.00, but it's whatever. It's not gonna, you're not gonna see a difference here. Result, but behind the scenes, this is how you can actually define different values as a floating point. I don't have to do. Maybe I should make it more apparent. All right, 54, and this would be like, I don't know, 37. All right, I don't know. So I just grabbed two random key values. I just like typed in the keys, random values, just so I can see a difference here. And here you can see the floating point values appear. It's going to be 0.00, so it's kind of truncated off. But otherwise, if you have other numbers other than just zeros, then it will actually display it. And here we can see the result of that division. So very, very cool. And that's how that works. Not only can we do divide, but we can also do modulus. Modulus is going to be done as a percent sign, like that. And essentially, modulus means find the remainder. So if you remember doing long division way back in school, like in, oh gosh, it was 3rd or 4th grade or something like that, you could do the remainder of two values. And in this case, it's going to be 6 of that. Sure. We'll just, okay, whatever. So you kind of get that whole thing set up as far as that goes there. Let's see here. I'm trying to think. What else do I need to cover? Oh yeah. Probably need to cover incrementers and decrementers. And also when you cover the add equals and things of that nature. Alright, so this is no longer be a true statement on this echo here, but I'm just going to add some stuff up here real quick. If I say something like $ sum here, I could say plus equals here. I don't know. We could just do plus equals. Well, let's say we did, just as a for instance, alright, let's say we cut this out here. We do that. And so, okay, now it's still a true statement. I'm trying to think of how to make it still a true statement, but still show this off. Alright, so going back to plus. What plus equals does is something a little different. And plus equals is cool because instead of having to say sum equals sum plus, blah 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 value, I can just say sum plus equals. Essentially, this plus equals here would be the same thing as me typing out $ sum equals $ sum again plus $ IMY, like that. Alright, so that's the same thing right there is equivalent to this right here. And so this little plus equals makes it do shorthand, so we don't have to type as much. It keeps us from having to say sum equals sum plus. So in order to keep from having to say that, we can just say plus equal, and it's shorter. It's so that you can type less and make your coding more efficient for how quickly you type and write up code. If you're doing this day in and day out on a regular basis, it makes a difference in your speed of if you don't have to type everything out like that. It's kind of redundant to type that on a regular basis, and so it's really common and really popular. So they implement in C++, where you could actually do this plus equals type stuff, and it's made its way into a lot of other languages like Java and PHP, etc. So that's what that is right there, and this still holds as a true statement. So let's go ahead and look at our web browser here, and there we are. So when we run this, we get those values added up. Okay, cool. We could also, besides that, we can also say subtract equals. So if I say minus equals, this also works. Come in here and say minus like that, and this is also a functional bit of code. So there we are. There's a result, and that works. And then if I come in here and do multiply equals, it lets me multiply equals just as if I was doing the sum. So the same thing as sum equals sum times dollars, in y for n y, so that's the incoming code, and there we go, like so. Bam. And there's our output. Now coming back over here again, just going to say divide equals. Alright, move this back over here again, and it's going to let me divide them. So there's your divide equals. You can also do modulus equals too while we're at it. Percent. Bam, and there we go again with that. Okay, so there's that. Oh yeah, I need to do my incrementers too. Yep. Alright, so and I think I'm just going to add one more thing in here. Like that. Alright, so now we're going to add our incrementers. I'm just going to go back to what we were before on this whole thing. Grandiose thing here, space plus. Like that. Alright, awesome. Alright. Now, this will matter on here. Okay, I want to show you. Alright, let's get more complicated with it. And in doing so, this will give you a better idea of how to do this. Now we have pre and post. Now this is really important when you're coding. If you do a pre, you do the plus plus ahead of time, and this increments this variable before it gets evaluated. What I mean by evaluated is it has to actually look inside this variable for what value it stores. So what we can do is we can say add 1, then the plus plus adds 1. This comes from C++. Add 1 as an incrementer to our code, and store that inside of sum. And the result is that we end up with this code that basically it's going to give us the right value here. So this is going to be incremented from whatever the value is. Let's go with something more standard here so we can see what on earth this stuff is. Alright, let's just say 5, and then you can do this off the top of your head easily that way. Alright, here we go. So it's still float, but it's, by float I mean real numbers, like a number with a decimal number. Alright, so I say plus plus is going to increment it by 1. It's going to increment it by 1 before it displays what's inside the result. So if I say 9.5 plus 6.5, I'm going to get 16, right? But if I increment it ahead of time, I'll have 17, and it's going to display 17. So that's what's the important part of this pre here is. And it makes a difference. It can make a difference in other type of code too, but just trying to show this off. Bam, there we go. So we get 17 gets displayed. But I can also do a post, and in certain circumstances, I want to increment it after the fact and not, and before it gets evaluated. I want to increment it after it gets evaluated, and not before. Right there is before, the plus plus in front of it. But if I do a plus plus after it, this will do a post increment. And so if I come back over here to Firefox and reload, bam. So it's actually 17 for our value. Now this will mess with you, but it's displaying 16. You're going, no, it didn't increment it at all. Actually, it did. I'll prove it. So if I come down here and echo again, and then do my BR tag again, echo here, and I'll just say $sum like this. and then I say dot concatenate that, and then you do in quotes, and then you say open here tag for br slash here, close tag here like that, semicolon. All right, and then that's going to give me our break statement at the end of that line, and it's going to show the sum here after. See, sum before it gets evaluated with our incrementer, so meaning that it increments after the summation has been displayed, and then here it is after that line was displayed. So essentially, it's going to show 16, right? Because it's going to have 6.5 plus 9.5 added together, which is 16. It grabs that value, displays that value, and then increments 16 to 17. But it doesn't get displayed because it's already displayed it. That's what I mean by it's a post evaluation. It evaluates the displaying part of it before it adds it. So it's going to display first, and then it's going to add second. Whereas before on the pre here, it's a plus plus in front of it and not after it. And this is going to make it increment from 16 to 17 and then display it. So that's the difference between the plus plus in front of it versus the plus plus after it. But it is actually incremented to 17 after we're done displaying this message. And I'll prove it with this statement here. So if I come in here and say reload, bam, there it is. So you see 16, it's actually 17 now stored in there. It was 16 when it went to display it. However, the moment it finished displaying it, since it's a post, it has that plus plus at the end, it actually incremented it, and the value is actually 17. Same thing goes down here, 12 plus 17 plus 1. Really, it's actually 29 here on what's being displayed, but it really actually has 30 in it after the message gets displayed. So of course, these are untrue statements here, so you want to, in this case, use a pre and not a post for your incrementer, because technically this is incorrect for the statement here. Whereas like if I increment this ahead of time, I'll prove this. It's the same value. It doesn't increment again afterwards. I'll show you. Bam. So 17 here and 17 there, and that's the correct statement now. Yeah. So basically, it increments it before it displays it here, and you can see that actually happening here with both of those for the way that is laid out. So very, very cool. But not only can we do it with plus plus for incrementers, but we also do decrementers. So I can actually subtract it by 1, like so. And in here I can say -1 like that. And since I'm doing this pre, it's going to come out right. And if I do it post, it will of course give me a wrong statement, because it's going to get evaluated too late to be a correct statement. So if I come in here like that, I'm going to say it 6.5 plus 9.5 minus 1 is equal to 15. Sorry, not 17, 15. And then 12 plus 17 minus 1 is 28. So it's correct. And you can see that again we get the pre-incrementer, pre-decrementer, where it's actually deducting it 1 before it gets displayed. And again, in this scenario, that's what we want. Sometimes you don't want that. You want to do it in post. Otherwise, you'll get like a code error or something of that nature. So what happens if I put this in post? Well, you're going to get the wrong result, right? It's going to be 1 too high when it displays versus, when it doesn't display. So here we go, and it's going to get decremented after the fact. So here it says 16, which is a totally inaccurate statement, and the actual value after this message gets displayed again is 15. The same thing goes down here. The actual one is 28 after it gets displayed. When it gets displayed, it is 29, but then it decrements it afterwards, and then it's 28 thereafter in the code. So because of that, that is how decrementers and incrementers work. Very, very cool. Okay. Let's see here. I need to go over some more stuff. I've gone over a decent amount, but I got more to cover than this as far as this goes here. Trying to think, what should I cover next here? Okay, let's find out string positions inside of a string. Sounds good to me. Maybe I want to know what the particular word is in position. So we have an add one down here, but what if we did a different function? So I'm going to delete that one right now because I don't want it anymore. I don't want this line anymore. I think we got the point across here. Alright, so if I come in here and I create a new function. Let's say function again, like this, and I'm going to name it something like word loc. How about that? Word for loc, like that. Open close parentheses. I'm going to pass in a word. Yay, word. Something of that nature. And then I'm going to say open curly brace, close curly brace, like that. Bam, like that. Awesome, awesome, awesome. Okay, so now we need to find our string position in this. So what we can say is something like echo, quotes here, and then yeah, we need to pass in the string too. So like so something like $signs, sentence, comma there, sentence. Okay. So inside the sentence, we need to find its position of the word. So if I come in here and I say strpos, like that, open close parentheses, and then I can say, I can pass in two things. One's going to be the sentence variable, and then the other one is going to be the word that I want to find in my sentence, like so. Semicolon ends it, like so, and it's going to display where the position as far as a number goes in that string. And then I can display also the sentence too. So, oh, I don't want to. I'm just going to display the position. That's good enough. Alright, so if I come in here, I don't know why I made another space there, but anyways, word loc, open close parentheses, semicolon. Alright, so I have my sentence in here, comma, and my word I'm hunting for. So let's see here. Find a word in this string. Alright, so we have a string here, period. And I want to find, let's find this, for instance, the position of this in here. It's tempted to say word, but I don't want to. Alright, let's go space that out like that, because it's prettier. Okay, cool. Alright, I'm going to come in here and save this now. And let's go back over here and update our function. Bam, like that. Give 15, and that is our position inside of this thing, which will throw you off because you're thinking that this is 15 from here, but it's not. It's actually the position of this happens to be 15. Just to prove it, I'm going to change this to n. What a coincidence. That's hilarious. Alright, come back over here in Firefox. I'm going to refresh, and in it says 1. Actually, that's weird. Oh, because it's finding it for find. Right. $11. So I had to put spaces around it because technically it was right. In was the first location in there. I'll point out what I'm saying. When I didn't put spaces around it, in, so like F would be 0, and then 1 here, I would be 1. So it found in inside of find. So it did find the word within inside the sentence. It's just not what you're expecting. So if I wanted in as itself, I put spaces on each side. They act as what's called delimiters. And by having the spaces on each side, it means that it has to be a word, because the space is what separates the words from each other. And basically what separates one thing from another thing is called a delimiter. So in this case, the spaces are the delimiter around each side of this word here, and thus it separates it from the in inside of find. So that's why I did that real quick there. And let us find this our string position. So that's a good example there of that. Oh yeah, we can also find string length. I should go over that. Let's do that real quick. So that was string loc. Let's do another one. You know, I'm not even going to bother to write a function for it. It's so short, there's no point. The other one was like, sure, but this one, eh. Even the other one didn't make sense for me, honestly, to write one. Oh, well, whatever. It's whatever. String length. I'm too lazy to type something, so I'm just going to grab this one right here. I'm just going to copy and paste it, Control C. Control V like that and paste that in. And I'm going to say save. Okay, let's go back over here to Firefox and reload. Bam. And you're like going, it's 1127. No, again, we didn't do that break statement. And so we're getting more stuff than what we wanted in there. We need to put a break statement at the end of this echo because it's a bit of a problem if we don't. So again, dot here to concatenate inside of quotes. Again, let's do our BR tag. And it brings up another point I'm going to go over in just a second. This kind of matters. By kind of, I mean really matters. And it gets into, actually we can do more than just these double quotes. We can do single quotes. I'll get into that in a second. You can intermix them. It's kind of cool. Alright. In certain instances, it's extremely useful. It might have already occurred to you that might be a problem with certain HTML tags. It's okay. We got it taken care of. Alright, so we have 11 for its position and then 27 characters long for the whole string. So there are some string tags as far as that goes and how that works and everything. So that's just some of the string manipulators we can use. We have more than that by far. And we also have a lot of test conditions, which I'll have to get into in the next video. I'm not going to get into it in this video. We'll go over if statements and test conditions here next after we're done covering this here. Okay, something I want to point out. I don't have to just do double quotes. I can actually get away with doing single quotes like this here. And this is totally legitimate. You can either do single quotes or double quotes. You might be going, well, why would you have both? Well, think about it. If you have a style tag, right, inside of style, inside of, or a number of other options inside of HTML, you might have double quotes in there. That's a problem, right? Because if I sit there and say color, colon space here, something like pound FFFF for white, right? That's an issue if I don't essentially put single quotes around this when I'm echoing that out. Because if I don't, I'm going to have an error, right? If I put double quotes in here, it's going to start and end the string. That's not going to work out well. So I need to use single quotes around that in order to encapsulate that. So that's something we can do with this, and it works out quite well, actually. It's quite nice. But anyways, single quotes work. I'll prove it. Come back over to the web browser, hit reload, and you can see no difference. The reason why we have no difference is because it worked. Otherwise, we'd start seeing things we shouldn't see. So, good example of also how you could use single quotes or double quotes. It covers how to do variables, how to do functions, how to use globals, how to do local variables, how to pass in variables as parameters, how to concatenate strings, how to do string positions, how to get string length, how to do a bunch of different things, how to find string within a string for its position anyways. I already said that really. Oh yeah, how to do different types of variables, how to do typecasting a variable temporarily. Yeah, so a lot of stuff. We also can assign a string or text essentially to a variable. So I could say something like word, for instance, and then that word variable would actually store a word. Essentially what we did here with sentence and word. So anyways, that's just some basic introduction here to PHP. I'm sorry. And then in the next videos we'll get into doing if statements and loops along with arrays, things of that nature. Might have to be a couple of videos actually to cover all that. And then we'll just kind of start applying this stuff here to actual HTML, start generating HTML tags, start submitting forms, start getting into how to do MySQL database programming with this, how to load data back and forth between different pages, how to include a file in another file to make it even more robust and more powerful. We'll get into how to do that. Very nice, very cool. And we'll start stepping it up and get more and more advanced with this as we go. But anyways, this is a nice introduction to this, and then we'll just go into more depth here. All right, but with that, my name is Nate Lester, and this is for Hyperactive Studios. Thank you very much.